The day Russia went dark. The first sign of collapse came not with the sound of sirens, but with silence. In the frozen Siberian city of Tuman, a voice cracked through the still air. "We're doomed. We're isolated. Phones had gone dead. ATMs froze mid-transaction. Taxi meters blinked out, and card readers in grocery stores stopped responding. A city of nearly 1 million had gone offline in an instant, but this was no cyber attack. No storm, no glitch. It was an order from Moscow. For the first time in modern history, the Kremlin had pulled the digital plug on one of its own cities. The reason? Fear. Fear of the panic stirred by Ukrainian drone attacks. Fear of chaos. Fear of truth. The solution they chose was simple and brutal. Cut off mobile internet across vast swathes of the country, from Yekaterinburg to Murmansk, from Kirov to Tumen. Overnight, the service unavailable message became a national symbol of helplessness. Smartphones turned into bricks. Stores couldn't sell. Banks couldn't lend. Taxis couldn't drive. The digital world Russia had spent decades building collapsed in minutes, and with it came a chilling realization. This wasn't a malfunction. It was a weapon. The operation had been planned years in advance. In Moscow, Roskomnadzor, the state's censorship agency, issued emergency directives to Russia's 4 major telecom operators: MTS, Beeline, Megafon, and Tele2. The order was blunt: interrupt all mobile data traffic immediately. The pretext? National security threats. The true purpose? Containment of panic and control of perception. Through the Deep Packet Inspection System, or DPI, the Kremlin had built its very own digital chokehold, a nationwide network that could filter, slow, or silence any signal. The so-called Sovereign Internet Law of 2019 had required every provider to install this equipment. The promise had been protection from Western cyber attacks. The reality was total control over the Russian people. Now, in 2025, that control was being exercised with surgical precision. Social media apps like Telegram and YouTube were throttled to uselessness. Transactions froze. Messages failed. Even Russia's internal .ru network collapsed during a mysterious outage the year before, leaving national giants like Yandex and Sberbank inaccessible for hours. The fragility of the entire system was exposed, and the Kremlin had learned how to weaponize it. But the blackout wasn't just digital. It was physical. Weeks earlier, in the Moscow suburb of Podolsk, heating pipes had burst in -20 degrees. Tens of thousands froze as officials rushed not to repair, but to censor. When the Luch thermal plant in Belgorod went offline after a Ukrainian drone strike, hundreds of thousands were left in darkness. Each crisis followed the same pattern: failure, denial, blackout. The government no longer solved problems, it silenced them, and in this silence, the true collapse began. The regime's fear was twofold. Militarily, it feared the invisible reach of Ukrainian drones that struck deep into Russian territory, beyond the range of its once feared S-400 systems. Politically, it feared the images, high-resolution videos of explosions, of freezing families, of panic, that spread across Telegram faster than state media could suppress. So the Kremlin chose to kill the messenger. By cutting the internet, it could silence truth for a few hours, perhaps even delay the next wave of outrage. But the price was catastrophic. With no internet, Russia's cashless economy ground to a halt. Card systems failed, QR payments vanished, and the digital MIR system, Russia's domestic substitute for Visa and MasterCard, crashed. Long queues formed at dead ATMs. Those few that worked were emptied in minutes. Stores hung handwritten cash-only signs, but most people had none. The panic spread like frostbite through the country's veins. Yandex couriers couldn't navigate. Truck convoys lost GPS signals, warehouse systems crashed, supply chains buckled across the world's largest nation. By trying to stop drones, the Kremlin had paralyzed its own logistics. By silencing its people, it had silenced its economy. Beneath the surface lay an even deeper paranoia: Operation Spiderweb. Whispered among military circles, it was the belief that civilian phones, through their 4G and 5G signals, were creating digital maps that helped Ukrainian drones navigate. It was a fantasy born of fear. But fear is a powerful force. It justified the blackout. It justified punishing millions. To the Kremlin, it was easier to believe that their own citizens' phones were helping the enemy than to admit that Russia's air defenses were failing. And so, one by one, the lights went out. By the third day, despair had replaced confusion. People couldn't reach their families. Emergency services were silent. Only old car radios still worked, blaring government broadcasts reminiscent of the Cold War. Propaganda filled the void where information used to live. The phrase, "We are isolated," spread by word of mouth. Like a ghost of the internet that once was. This was not the future anyone had imagined. It was a return to the 1980s, only colder, lonelier, more suffocating. When the order was finally lifted, the damage was done. Trust, once the currency of Putin's promise of stability, had evaporated. People no longer believed the regime could protect them. Not from Ukraine. Not from the cold. Not from themselves. The blackout of Tuman became a symbol, not of strength, but of surrender, a confession that the Kremlin feared its own citizens more than any foreign enemy. As one observer put it, cutting off the internet to protect your people is like burning down your house to keep out a thief. Maybe the thief can't get in, but there's no house left to save. And so, Russia entered a new kind of war, one not fought with missiles or drones, but with silence. A war between a paranoid regime and the society it could no longer trust. Phones had become bricks. Cities had become digital prisons. And the man who rose to power promising stability had, with his own hands, plunged the nation back into chaos. What began as a defense against drones ended as a digital civil war. A war the Kremlin could never win, because this time the enemy was itself.